All right, we're ready.
Okay, so let me share my screen. That says I need to send a request. Okay. Um, let's do personal screen share and okay, everybody can see it.
Yep.
See the screen. Okay, this is our official title page for UF with all the advertising that they want us to show. But I thought I'd start by sharing a little bit about my background and where I've been. I'm at my, let's see, fifth university now. So I started off, did my undergrad at BYU, graduated, oh, it's been 23 years now. It's been old. And then went to University of Texas. I have all this on there. For me, my undergrad degree is especially important to me because I met my wife there, and we were married right before I graduated. And then that fall, my wife transferred to Texas, and I started grad school at Texas, and she finished her degree there at UT Austin, in basically an elementary ed field, and I finished in civil engineering from UT. I worked with Kevin Folliard and Maria Younger, and then also Anton Schindler from Auburn worked on our project with me. John Poole and I graduated at the same time, and had just a marvelous experience there. Couldn't ask to work with better people. Kevin, Maria, Anton are just phenomenal people to work with. So I got really lucky there. Then I did a year of postdoc at EPFL, working in Switzerland and with Karen Scrivener's group. And then after that, I went to Kansas State and started as an assistant professor in 2008. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But then left in 2016 to come to UF, and I've been here ever since. And I just started in last fall as our department head at Civil and Coastal Engineering. And the way our structure is set up in University of Florida, we have a Civil and Coastal Engineering department and an Environmental Engineering department that cover the academic issues that come up, student issues, curriculum issues. And then we have a school director over both of those departments who handles the budget and HR. So basically, you could say I'm a middle manager. Maybe I was born to be a middle manager. I don't know. Last July, also, I started as the interim director of our University of Florida Transportation Institute. So I've been doing that for almost a year. Hopefully, we'll have a permanent director soon. Okay, so that's just a little bit of background, because in talking about overcoming adversity, I could go through and I could write a self-help book for you if you wanted, but I thought that'd be kind of boring. So I thought I'd talk more about some of the lessons I've learned over the years, my 17 years of teaching, and some of the things that I had to overcome, and ways that I got there, and maybe some ideas. And then after that, we can talk about some of the issues you're facing, maybe have some brainstorming and come up with hopefully some ideas, and hopefully everybody leaves today singing Kumbaya and is very optimistic about where things are going. So the first thing I wanted to tell you about is my first experience teaching class as a new assistant professor. Okay, so as a new assistant professor, I was in Switzerland at the time, like I was saying, and right before I was supposed to start work at K-State, about 2 weeks before I was flying out to move to Kansas, I got a call from our department in Kansas saying, hey, one of the professor's daughters just came down with leukemia and has to go through treatments, and the professor can't teach the statics and dynamics class. We need you to teach this class. And originally I was supposed to only be partially teaching a couple classes, contributing as some lectures or a couple of the materials classes to help me get started, to get my research program going. But 2 weeks beforehand, that changed in an instant to to basically them mailing me a textbook back in the old days, physically mailing a textbook to Switzerland that I got a couple days before I flew out to start work. And the status and dynamics is something that we're all familiar with, but how to teach it is a different story. Especially these students were non-majors. It was a combined class for non-civil engineering majors such as bioag or chemical engineers that were just taking it as part of the requirements to help them pass the fundamentals of engineering exam. Okay, so that's fine. I thought, okay, I can do this. I know statics, I know dynamics, I can teach this class. But then I found out where I was teaching. Well, first off, I walked in my first day of work and dressed up. The first day of work was the faculty retreat. Showed up to the office. Hey, I'm ready to go. Where's my office? And they thought I was a student and tried to shoo me away. They didn't want to deal with me at the staff office. So once I convinced them on that I actually belonged, or at least they thought I might, then went to the faculty meeting and we talked about it, and then they assigned me to teach in the dining hall. And so my first class was teaching in the lounge of the dining hall. That was the only classroom that they had at the time. And the class was all non-majors that didn't want to be there, frankly. It was a class they were required to teach or to take and didn't want to take it. And the board that they gave me to write on and do everything on was a whiteboard similar to this. And it was a little worn out. It's one of these reversible boards that you can flip over, but it was kind of worn out so that if you didn't write just so, the board would flip on you when you were writing. So it was basically slapstick comedy of me trying to write on the board, try to figure out how to teach students that didn't want to be there in the dining hall. So, I mean, needless to say, my first several weeks were a flop and did not go anywhere near where I wanted them to be. And so I wasn't sure how to proceed. What do I do? I talked to some of the other professors. I attended some of their classes to learn what they were doing, how they were teaching. And the next thing I did was get lots of feedback from students. Every about 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, I'd give them a anonymous survey to fill out, trying to collect information back on how I can improve their learning and seeing how we could fix things. Halfway through the semester, we found another classroom and we switched classrooms that had a proper whiteboard. It wouldn't flip on me when I was writing, and was able to somewhat right the ship in terms of some of their outcomes. But it was a great learning experience for me. And things went about as bad as they could in terms of facilities, in terms of student expectations and student enthusiasm to be there. But I learned a tremendous amount. I show these. I went back and looked at the teacher evaluations this morning from it, and you can see it's a mixed bag. I finished in the bottom 10% of teacher evaluations for the entire university that year. And it was deserved. I was not a good teacher that semester, but I tried really hard. And, that's something that even though the numbers looked terrible on paper, I show you the comments here just to show that, even if things are going bad from a quantitative point of view, I at least turned the ship around so that I was able to make some progress and get going in the right way and help the students learn. And you can see from them, some of them are kind of random, much improved, take suggestions well, and that's something to look at. One student complained that there are no kittens in class. You can see that one. But it's really improvement is what we can shoot for, and that's something we can try. And that was something that helped me enormously throughout that class is, get feedback and listen to it. And from the student feedback, so you can see that really helped. And I was able to bring it up from bottom 10% that semester to middle of the road, at least the next semester, and continue improving, which I thought was pretty good for a class where it was non-majors for students that didn't want to be there. Okay, so another example I'll give you of time that I had faced of something that was difficult for me was I had a project. I was only a couple years into my job in Kansas, and I had a project that we had to get our report in Monday. And the student came to me, it was either Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, and basically said he was done. He was quitting. We had the report draft done, but we had to go back and make revisions on it that were due Monday. And to make matters worse, my mother was flying into town to spend a little bit of time with our family and with our young kids. And basically the student, I tried everything I could do. It was his thesis. All he had to do was spend a little bit of time that Friday and Saturday morning making some corrections with me on it, getting it fixed up. And that would have been his thesis that he would have been able to defend, but he was just done. There was nothing I could do to convince him. He basically suffered a breakdown and was done. And so the burden fell on me to get the report done. And I had to figure out where all the data was that the student was. And all while my wife was putting up with my mother at home. And you can bet that I heard about that later. So with this, what do you do in that case? I went to my department head, and he was basically sympathetic. He said, this sometimes happens. It's happened to all of us. Getting a student to quit, it stinks. What are you going to do? And went back and well, that's great that he's sympathetic, but that didn't help solve my problem. So I thought about all the different things that I could do, and basically came down to the conclusion that you got to do the work. So I spent all weekend there at the office, basically fixing up the report and getting it done and turning it in, and it got turned in on time. And it was good. It was fine. The report was okay, but the only way to fix it was just good old-fashioned hard work, putting in the extra hours. And sometimes that's what it requires, is just figuring out what are all your options, and sometimes it just takes extra work. Okay, so this is another example that I'd like to share with you. This is a house in Kansas, and I believe this is the one we put an offer on. I could be off by a couple houses, but I went on Google Earth and found a picture of what I think was the house. Back in February of 2008, as I said, I started as February of 2009. I started as an assistant professor in 2008. And if you remember back to 2008, that's when basically the economy came to a standstill. I was the last professor hired basically before a hiring freeze at K-State, snuck in just under the wire, and was very grateful for it, and got there and made an offer on a home. And when I made the offer on a home in February, a couple days later, my department head, he was an interim department head, and he came to me and said, I heard you just came here and put an offer on a home, and you may want to rethink that offer. You may want to try and get out of it, because we just formed the committees to lay you off. And that was a pretty tough day for me, to have to go home to my wife and tell her that I just started 6 months ago, and the economy was crashing, and I may be without a job pretty soon. And we have this home we just put an offer on, and we got to figure out what to do. Now we went through there was an inspection on the home, and there were significant enough problems that we canceled the offer because of the problems that were there. And we got out of the home purchase. Luckily, a few months later, things started to improve, and the economy stabilized a little bit, and we ended up putting an offer on a different home in May, and bought a different home that we liked actually even better. But that was a tough moment to have to come home and tell my wife that hey, we can't we can't go through with this home purchase because I may have a job in. That was just because the university was looking at laying people off because their budget was getting slashed by the state. So I tell this story because if you've been reading the headlines at all in the last couple months, budgets for projects have been getting slashed left and right. I'm sure some of you have had some of this and fallen victim to the changes in government priorities. I know here I was a co-PI on a project that we had that was going through contracting with FHWA. And then we got an email a couple of weeks ago saying that not just our project, but the entire program is canceled. So it sounds like, you know, from an academic point of view, history doesn't always repeat itself, but it sometimes rhymes. And what we're going through right now seems like it's rhyming a little bit with what happened in 2008. When it was 2008 and I started my job, I had some companies, a company that we were in talks to do a project together and help me get started on my career and get some research going. And then the recession hit in 2008 and basically nothing happened. And so I was back to the drawing board. So that year with funding that was a little bit precarious, I was thinking about all the ways that I could get funding, and I had submitted pre-proposals to the Kansas Department of Transportation. And the one that I had submitted that year that I had talked to the DOT about, they sounded somewhat positive. The rankings came out of what they were going to fund, and the way it worked with this K-Trend research program is $400,000 a year went to Kansas State and $400,000 went to the University of Kansas every year, split right down the middle. And they would just rank your projects in order of priority to the department. And when they ran out of money for your university, they ran out of money, and you know, those projects didn't get funded after that. And my proposal that I had submitted fell just below the cutoff line. I was the first one cut. And so, you know, I realized, you know, hey, look, they're already talking about layoffs. What do I have to lose, right? I need to get some research coming in. I don't have anything to lose here. You know, what's the worst that can happen? So I went to our dean, scheduled a meeting with our dean. He was on the research committee for the Kansas Department of Transportation to help with the final allocation of funding, because they went through and did the rankings, and then they met to actually make the final formal decision. And I met with him, and I thought, you know, he's probably going to be annoyed by me doing this, and I'm probably going to ruin my relationship with this dean forever. But what do I got to lose? So I went and met with him and begged for him basically to, hey, look, I have this proposal. It's just below the cutoff. There was still, I think it was 12,500 that was in the budget. They'd only allocated 387,500. Give me that 12,500. Convince him to at least partially fund my project and help me get started. I need something to get started. And I thought, okay, he's gonna hate me. He's not gonna go for this. He's gonna think I'm wasting my time. But he ended up actually doing it. He went to the KDOT meeting and made a pitch for me to get this partial funding so that we could get our full $400,000, and got me the money, helped me get my first research project as a PI. And actually, from what he said later, I'd actually helped earn his respect, because he liked the fact that I was going to go in and advocate for myself and not take no for an answer, and really do my best to get everything together and build my research program. And so sometimes, you know, if your back's against the wall, you know, what, if you got nothing to lose, why not go for it? Why not try things? This reminds me of another story. One of my colleagues at K-State, Bob Peterman, he told me his story about when he was working in industry before he was a professor. He took a job with the engineering company doing the IT support. He was an engineer, but thought, how hard can it be? I know computers. And he became the IT person for the company. Well, it turns out after his first day on the job, he realized he didn't know anything about IT support for the company. And within a couple months was fired because he really didn't know anything about IT. And he said that it was his worst nightmare come true. His worst nightmare and his biggest fear in life was that he would lose his job and get laid off, and how would he support his family? He said it was a tough month or two, but he was able to find another job, went back to school, got his PhD, and ended up being a blessing in disguise that he was he was able to pivot and make the decision to go back to school and became a professor and did really well. And so what he was saying is basically, you know, I lived my worst fear, but then after my worst fear came true, I realized it wasn't as bad, nearly as bad as I thought. So there's, you know, having some perspective on what you're going through can help, and maybe thinking a little bit longer term. So that's what the first thing I wanted to bring up is have some perspective, be gentle on yourself, give yourself some grace. And, you know, all of you are PhD engineers and scientists, and have done amazing things so far, just amazing things that all of you should be very proud of just to make it to this point. Academic jobs are extremely difficult to get. There is no such thing as a bad academic job, because for every academic job that comes open, you're getting 70, 100, 200 applicants that are all very happy to do that job. So you should be proud of yourself, give yourself some grace that you know, nobody's perfect, and nobody's going to do everything perfect. Be honest with yourself and others. When you make mistakes, be honest about it. I, in fact, had to eat a little bit of humble pie this week because we were working with a donor, and I completely botched the awarding of a scholarship for a student, and had to basically come back and say, look, I messed this up. I apologize for it. You know, we can still make this happen, get this student a scholarship, and you know, how do you want to proceed? And he was able to accept my apology and move on. And I think we'll actually have a much better relationship going forward. And mainly because I was willing to own my mistakes. So be honest with yourself and others. People appreciate honesty, and people can mostly tell when you're not being honest, but being honest with yourself is probably the most important thing. I love this quote from Henry Winkler, the Fonz. He said this on NPR show: I live by two words, tenacity and gratitude. Tenacity gets me where I want, and gratitude doesn't allow me to be angry along the way. And so being grateful for what you do have, and I think all of us have a lot to be grateful for, given our privilege that we have as faculty. I mean, we all get to work with just amazing students every day. That's such a privilege. So I think that covers some perspective that you can have, and some of it is changing perspective too. So, and this is something that I've learned from my current boss, who's stepping down tomorrow. Is this quote here, basically from John D. Rockefeller: a pessimist is one who sees disaster in every opportunity. An optimist sees opportunity in every disaster. And so every challenge that we have, every point of adversity comes with an opportunity. And the key is to find out where that opportunity is in the challenge that you're facing. The pessimists aren't going to look for that opportunity. They're going to miss it. And they're going to miss lots of different ways that they could advance and do better. If you look at companies, new company creation ends up peaking usually during recessions. You have people that are laid off, and what do? They end up starting new companies. They have an idea, and they start a new company to accomplish it. So what you find is that people that see the opportunities are going to end up ahead and doing much better than those who don't. So it's about reframing your perspective to find those opportunities. You know, changes in society is pretty breathtaking right now with AI. It's really advancing things. It's changing what we have to do. So we all have to be willing to adapt, change focus. And for me, when I have had some of these issues, I've had to adapt. I'll give you an example of, I submitted a career award. It was my first summer as an assistant professor, and the career award, it wasn't great. The idea was good, but the actual proposal was not very good. And I talked to the program manager. I volunteered to serve on one of the review panels, and he was kind enough to let me do that. And afterwards, I talked to him about it, and he basically gave me a tip. Hey, there's another program your career award didn't really fit this one very well, but this other one, this bridge program, it might fit much better on, and you might think about it. So I basically took that career proposal and repackaged it into this other program, and he was able to fund it that way and get me started going that way. So sometimes it's about being willing to adapt and change your focus. That maybe that program isn't the best. You can look at other programs, but being adaptable is very, very critical. And then the value of hard work. So I gave you a couple of examples, one from the student quitting, and I was able to come in and with some hard work, get it done. I ended up learning, all of what was being done and learned the data a lot better. That's one good thing that came out of it. Sometimes it feels like Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill every day, and feel like, am I making any progress? But sometimes hard work is the only way to get out of problems. As engineers, what's engineering? It's breaking difficult problems up into small manageable pieces that we know how to solve. And that's got to be part of it too, is when you face these challenges, breaking it up into smaller problems that you can actually solve. And that's something to consider too. This is one of the main points I wanted to have is lean on your network. You've got a great network of people that are on this call right now. So advocate for yourself, like I was able to do with the dean. Go in and advocate with him for myself to help me get the funding. So don't be afraid to call people and help them. That being said, if you're going to call people, you have to be willing to reciprocate. And so that's something. Freely give and freely receive, and make sure that you're always the type of person that people know they can call, and that you'll freely give of your knowledge and help when they ask for it too. I think that's really critical. Be the type of person that they would feel comfortable helping. And then this one's from Mike Thomas. I paraphrased it a little bit to make it more PG rated. But surround yourself with good people. Don't waste your time working with unpleasant people. There's too many people that are good people that you could work with to waste your time with somebody who's going to drive you crazy. I'll usually work with anybody once, and if they're unpleasant, then you don't have to work with them again. It's okay. But surround yourself with good people. What Warren Buffett said, who you associate with is just enormously important. Don't expect you'll make every decision right on that. You're going to have your life progress in the general direction of people that you work with, that you admire, that become your friends. So make sure you surround yourself with good people, and all the people on this call. I think that's a good and wise way, is surround yourself with people like is on this call. So that being said, I've talked for a long time. So maybe have some discussion, in these uncertain times right now. How are your department heads acting or reacting? How are the people around you reacting? And maybe think about how we can reframe our way of thinking and find the opportunity in the challenges that we're facing. So with that, maybe I think now would be a good time for some discussion, group therapy, whatever you want to call it.